So I've got a poem which used to start: an old guy, Harry, sits alone at the back of the Black Boy pub when a bell rings to say the night is almost up. And that poem now starts: an old guy, Harry, sits alone at the back of the Bullstake pub when a bell rings to say the night is almost up. So let's talk about why. So my reasons for making this change in this poem were complex. So let's go through them. First off, why did I pick them? Well, I grew up in this post-industrial area called the Black Country, a very strong ex-mining community, industrial revolution, all that sort of stuff. And you did have pubs called the Black Boy pub. No one knows where that name came from. There are two theories. One theory is slavery. Yes, it's true that the working class in this area was exploited for their talents and their labour to create what was the Industrial Revolution and the wealth for Victorian Britain. That definitely happened. To say that was the only thing that was done is wrong, because slavery played a big part in it as well. So it's possible that the Black Boy pub is a carry-on from slavery. However, there's another theory, and the other theory is that it was to do with the fact that they used to send children into the mines to work. So you get 5-6-year-olds, and they'd be sitting at these kind of like fire doors, I think they were. I'm not sure if they were for fire or for air ventilation, but there were doors that was kind of like safety devices. Of course, you're talking the 1800s. They used to send 5-6-year-olds down to sit in the pitch black for like 12 hours a day at these doors, and then what would happen is they would see like the candles on the horse-drawn carriages come along with the coal, and they would open the doors for the carriage. Carriage would go through, and they'd shut the doors again, and they'd only have light for the time that the horse-drawn carriage went past. Now, obviously, when those kids came out of the mine at the end of their shift, they were covered in coal dust. So that's the other theory where the Black Boy pub name came from, was just these kids coming out of the mine covered in coal dust. Because you've got those ties with the Industrial Revolution, with slavery, with the exploitation of the workforce, that sort of thing, and because that carries on throughout the poem, so there's a bit later where this old guy that we're talking about in the poem has got vibrating hands, which is a disease. It's like nerve damage, I believe. It's a disease that miners got from the power tools. So that linked it. So although I knew that kind of contradiction was there in what the name of the pub meant, it tied it very firmly into coal mining, the Industrial Revolution. The Bullstake. I come from a little town called Darlaston, which has an area called the Bullstake in the centre of town. I'll say the centre of town, it's only one street. But yeah, there was a thing called the Bullstake. That was a stake that was originally put in the ground by the kind of lord of the manor, and they would tie a bull or a bear to that stake, and then the locals would come up and kill the bull or the bear, because it was better to kill the bull or the bear than the lord of the manor. It was like their version of the Daily Mail. Yeah, find another target and attack that. So that also worked as a pub name. So when I was writing it, I had these two options, and the reason I went with Black Boy, even though I knew there was that potential of people thinking it was more about the slavery than it was about the exploitation of the working classes, it's still firmly rooted in mining, in the Industrial Revolution, and it just felt more thematically relevant to the piece. I then submitted it to a place that came back and went, not sure about the name of the pub, because obviously there's the racial element to it. Now I could have gone, I'm not racist, why are you accusing me of being rah? What would that have solved? Nothing. I knew they weren't having a go at me, they weren't accusing me of anything. They were just saying, people who don't know you will read this, and that might send them off on another direction. And while I've got no problems with sending people one way to bring them back another, this felt different. This felt like, oh, actually, right at the start of the poem, people might start thinking this is about something which is kind of attached to, but not really. And whereas I just thought it was it's kind of tied it in. It might be it's sending people on a completely different tangent. And I need to rein that back in. So I changed it. I changed it to Bullsteak. Worked alliteratively. And it was still about that kind of exploitation of the working class. And that kind of, capitalist, them and us type of thing. Which permeates throughout all my work. And although I feel it's lost a little something, because I think the name of the pub doesn't tie it into mining, I do think it's also gained something in that it's not distracting people. You think it's the first line of the poem, and although I embrace the contradiction of where the name of the pub might have come from, it felt like rather than this just being a kind of, I'm just playing with you a bit here, it became I'm really sending you to somewhere I don't want you to go. As Jim Davidson took up poetry, I've had to ask myself the question, was I being a bit too blasé? And that's been a difficult question to ask myself, and I'm not entirely sure of the answer. I don't think you should write for an audience. I think you should write for yourself, and I think the audience will either go with you or they won't. But then I thought, am I pandering to the audience? Have I gone down the wrong route? But when I weighed it all up, it was like, hang on, this is about the fact that because this is so complicated, it didn't belong in this poem. That was kind of the realisation, really. The fact that I can do this video and I'm fighting with my own thoughts and my own ideas on it, and I wrote the poem just over these two lines. It's like it shows how complicated it is, and it's a short poem. This poem hasn't got the time to deal with all this. It's not its remit. You're going to have to start thinking about the exploitation of the working classes in the industrial black country, as well as racism. Yeah, and now you've got another rhyming couplet coming along. That wasn't the time or the place for it. So I changed it. Sometimes the advice you get off people is rubbish. Sometimes the advice you get off people is turning your work more into what they'd write than what you'd write. And sometimes they just highlight the fact that you're probably doing a little bit too much here. Rein it in a bit, lad. Fair enough, innit?